to some facts. In 1995, the African American population was 15% of the national population, and the Hispanic population was 13% of the national population. However, in the top 146 most selective universities, each race respectively only accounted for 6% of the student body population. What's startling is that the percentages, although varying from university to university, have not changed much since 1995. There have been two major Supreme Court cases, University of California Regents v. Bakke in 1978 and Grutter v. Bollinger in 2003, that have dealt with the topic of minority admissions and the topic of affirmative action in college admissions. Both cases ended up upholding affirmative action policies. However, as seen in Regents v. Bakke, these policies have to be a bit more vague as opposed to the 16 seats out of every 100 rule that caused the trial in the first place. Anti-affirmative action proponents feel that if standards were lowered for students just because of their race, then it would not only be doing the educational system a disservice, but also it would be doing the disservice to the students themselves as well.
At issue, a challenge to admission standards at the University of Texas, which take race into consideration.
This morning we argued before the Supreme Court that universities have a compelling interest in the educational benefits of diversity and that our use of race and ethnicity in the UT's holistic admissions process is narrow, is constitutional, and is in the best interest of our state and the nation.
Abigail Fisher is the challenger in the case. She says she was denied admission to UT Austin in 2008 because she's white.
Hopefully, this case will end racial classifications and preferences in admissions at the University of Texas.
Affirmative action has offered a pathway to opportunity for generations of students of color. It has taken steps to diversify our campuses, and it has made for a more just America.
It's personally unfair, passes over better qualified students, and sets a disturbing legal, political, and moral precedent.
The Constitution says no state shall deny any person equal protection of the laws. Notice it doesn't say that everyone has to be treated the same.
Once you start saying some people are more equal than others, to borrow from Orwell, with a multiracial society like we have, you get into an impossible racial spoils system.
Affirmative action is consistent with the text and history of the Equal Protection Clause.
The Equal Protection Clause permits colleges and universities to consider many characteristics: sexual orientation, political persuasion, gender, whether or not you're from Ohio.
Note that it doesn't say anything about protecting some races differently from other races. It applies to all races.
Whites and Asians who are excluded or overlooked to admit less qualified members of racially preferred groups.
No one's looking at just the race box. We're actually looking at the entire application and getting a sense of who that student is as a person.
You can't look at somebody and say, oh, you're black, you must have this background and this perspective. You've got to look at the individual.
'28, as the Supreme Court said in 2003, or 2050, or 2100, or 2200, or is this system of racial discrimination forever?
Today, race matters, not because it should, but because it does. And there is nothing in the Equal Protection Clause that says we have to ignore that reality.
Marianne Zhao is a freshman at Georgetown University. She says she thinks other factors besides race should be used when colleges make admissions decisions.
I think that affirmative action in college admissions, the main point of it is to kind of equalize opportunities for more people to come to college. But I think it would be more beneficial if it was based more on socioeconomic status rather than race. I feel that that would benefit more people in the long run.
Her classmate, Mon-Shin Kao, says he's undecided on the issue, but doesn't think being Asian helped him in the college admissions process.
My grades, while they weren't terrible, they weren't they weren't amazing either. So I believe because I'm an Asian American applicant, that may have led colleges to expect more from me.
Jian Lee, a Chinese American student who scored perfect on the SAT and on numerous AP tests, said that he was discriminated against by Princeton as well, based on his race. Now, back in 1997, there was a book by two, it's actually kind of interesting, Princeton sociologists, Thomas Espenshade and Alexandria Walton Radford. And they reviewed admissions data from 10 of the most elite schools in the country and found that, all else being equal, Asian applicants needed to score at least 140 points higher on standardized tests to do as well as white applicants. Now, the